Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Thank you so much for being here and to celebrate together the power of books and to discuss the future of reading. This morning when I came here, I met a wonderful reader, Paula. Where are you, Paula, in the audience? Yeah. Paula told me in many countries around the world, they are banning books, but we are here to celebrate the powers of books. Isn't that amazing? I am so grateful to be here, and I want to thank everyone who have worked so hard to put this event together, and it's so great to see so many people in the audience. Let me begin by stating my belief that our future would be nothing without books and without reading. Books is where we build our dreams and our visions, where we learn and connect, where we feel seen and understood, and where we find the strength to stand up and walk again after life let us down. I'm saying this because I have experienced this myself. Please allow me to share with you a true story today, a story of how books actually saved my life. It started when I was a young girl growing up in Bạc Liêu, a small town at the southern tip of Vietnam. Here's a picture of my mother and me at that time. It was in the year 1980, just after the end of the Vietnam War just after the end of the American War in Vietnam, when we had to live under American trade embargo and were isolated from most of the world. My parents were teachers, but their salary was insufficient to feed themselves, my two brothers and me. So we had to do all types of work. We planted rice and vegetables. I sold things on the street and in the market. I woke up every morning at 4 a.m. to catch shrimps and mud crabs from nearby rice fields so we could have something to eat. At that time, my family didn't have much, but our most precious belonging was a bookshelf that my father built himself from the bamboo he harvested from our garden. My parents loved to read, and they spent their savings on books that filled our bookshelf, books into which I disappeared often. We didn't have television, no telephone, and no internet. Can you imagine? We had electricity only once a week and only for a few hours. And it was really good for my reading, unlike today. So I read under the oil lamp during the night. I read during the day, sitting on top of my mango tree so nobody could find me. We didn't have access to a library, and the only bookshop in our town was a government bookshop which sold mainly textbooks or books published to advance the government's policies. Literary works were rare and expensive for my parents, so I held on to our books as if they were the most precious thing in the world. I read them again and again until the covers fell off, and my father had to cut pieces of cardboard and glue them into the covers, and sew the pages together so that the books could stay, together. When I ran out of things to read, I asked my neighbors, my relatives, and my parents' friends if they had books for me to borrow. Books were most important to me, but I didn't know they would save my life until the year 1988, when I was 15 years old, just after this picture was taken. One autumn day that year, I was sitting at my desk doing my homework when I heard my mother crying. I ran to the kitchen and saw that she was banging her head onto the hard clay jar that contained our drinking water. My strong mother, someone who had survived several wars, someone who had been my pillar, was trying to kill herself. I tried my best to stop her, and when I could calm her, she told me that the person whom my parents had trusted to invest all their savings had run away and could not be found. This woman had taken all of my parents' savings as well as a large amount of money my parents had borrowed from other people. Even today, I can't imagine how this woman could have earned my parents' trust. But apparently, she managed to cheat many people, some of them government officials and managers of banks. That night, my parents' creditors overwhelmed our house. I watched helplessly as these angry men and women shouted, demanding that my parents return their money immediately. They had heard my parents' misfortune and feared they would run away too, like their debtor. My parents begged them to give us time to repay the debt. Do you know, at that time, Vietnam was experiencing a terrible economic crisis. Our century-planned socialist economy wasn't functioning well. Inflation was as high as 400% per year. Each of my parents' creditors wanted to have his or her money back as soon as possible, especially when they saw that my parents had few chances to repay their debts. Their teaching salaries and earning from our rice field and garden was very small. So the creditors returned to our home every day with threats and demands. One night, they charged into our living room, bedroom, and kitchen, taking away anything of value that they could get their hands on. Gone was my clay pig, my saving bank in which I had stored the lucky money my parents had given me during the previous Vietnamese New Year. Gone was my bicycle, which I needed to go to school or to our rice field. Gone was my cassette tape player, which I needed to learn my English. Gone were our chickens and piglets, which I adored and considered as my pets. But the only objects they didn't seize were my books. Apparently, these creditors were not readers, and they didn't see the value of my books. One of my favorite Vietnamese proverbs says, "Trong cái rủi có cái may, good luck hides inside bad luck." The bad luck was that the creditors took away our belongings, but the good luck was that they were not readers and didn't know the values of the books we had on our shelves. Books of Vietnamese and translated literature, books that allowed me to travel even if I had no money. Unfortunately, our troubles were not over. My parents still owed people a great amount of money, so our creditors started to sue my parents to court. The court decided that my parents had to pay a high interest rate, and guess how high it was per month? 20% per month. Backdated from the time that my parents had borrowed the money. Because most people believed our family was doomed with bad luck, they did not want to associate with us. It took more than 1 year for my parents to sell our house, with the price so low it wasn't enough to pay our debt. We had nowhere to live, and the only choice my parents had was to rebuild our lives on a small patch of muddy rice field behind the town's cemetery. My brothers and I worked with my parents in digging up the earth from half of the rice field and pile it onto the second half to make the foundation of our new home. We used bamboo poles and coconut leaves to erect a structure with 2 rooms and a cooking area. Although our new house was just a hut, it became a home as soon as we put inside a bookshelf filled with our books. And here is a picture of my father outside our new home at that time, and a picture of my parents in our living room. They had lost so much weight at that time. They were just so thin. During that dark time, I was so ashamed of our downfall. My friends no longer visited me. I lived behind many abandoned graves and had to walk through the graves every day to be able to go to school. When I thought I had lost hopes, I returned to my books. I had always loved to read, but until then, I hadn't realized that books contain the magical power of giving me the strength that I needed it most. In the books that I read, I lived through my character struggles. I saw how the challenges they faced transformed them and enabled them to grow. I came across these lines from the poet Phùng Quán in a book. Có những phút ngã lòng tôi vịnh câu thơ và đứng dậy. In moments of difficulty, I hold on to the verses of poetry to pull myself up. I realized that as long as I had books to read, I was not poor. That realization made me less afraid of the future. In so many ways, books saved me. Even though we were still in debt and the future was still uncertain, thanks to my books, I began to dream again. I dreamed that one day, when I was living in this hut, that I would become a writer and my words would make someone feel less lonely, less scared, like the books were doing for me. And I dreamed that the characters in my books would inspire, give strength and hope, just like the characters in the books I was reading. Life continued to be tough for us, but my parents kept bringing books home. They nurtured me with their unconditional love, their belief in me, their fighting spirit, and their passion for storytelling. My mother had sung me countless lullabies when I was small, and my father told me countless fairy tales and legends. It is in my parents' storytelling that I saw myself as a storyteller. At 33 years of age, after having worked at many different jobs, I returned to my childhood dream. Do you know how I first ventured into my writing life? Well, I wrote poetry on my motorbike as I traveled from home to my office during the years I worked in Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. Even though I love motorbikes, composing poetry on the motorbike is something I don't advise you to do. It is dangerous. I was caught by the police many times because I was dreaming. I crossed the red lights without, thinking. I had to pay some fines, but in exchange, my first poems were published. They were about the street sellers of Hanoi and the garbage collectors. They were the heroes of my everyday life, those I saw on my way to work. I worked hard and published many books in Vietnamese literature, but I wanted to be a part of world literature, the way world literature had come to my home via translated books. So I attempted something absolutely crazy, even though I only had the chance to learn English from my 8th grade. I tried to write my first novel in English. Isn't that crazy? Yet it was. It took me 7 years to work on this book, The Mountains Sing. I was determined to document untold Vietnamese history and bring to light stories which have been buried due to trauma or censorship. Unlike Portugal, we have terrible censorship in Vietnam. Writers can be arrested and put into prisons. So writing is one of the most dangerous jobs. But I wrote in my book, The Mountains Sing, if I were to become a writer, I would not bend my pen to please the eyes and ears of those in power. And now it is my great honor that The Mountains Sing, or Quando as Montanhas Cantam, is available here in Portugal in the Portuguese language, thanks to the incredible work of my Portuguese translator, Carla Ribeiro, and publisher, Almados Livros. I am so honored. Thank you so much. The Mountain Sing is very much about the importance of books and storytelling. In the book, Grandma Diệu Lan tells her granddaughter Hương, if our stories survive, we will not die even when our bodies are no longer here on this earth. In this book, my character Hương was 12 when she experienced American bombs, which were dropped onto her city, Hanoi. Hương hated America for tearing her parents away from her and sending them to war. But later, she fell in love with American people through reading American literature. She thought to herself, I had resented America, but by reading their books, I saw the other side of them, their humanity. Somehow I was sure that if people were willing to read each other and see the light of other cultures, there would be no war on earth. I was born into the American war in Vietnam and experienced firsthand how wars destroy homes, nature, break families apart, killing, injuring, and traumatizing people for generations to come. Our weapon to fight against war, do you know what it is? Books. Yes, books foster empathy, understanding, and love. Books build connections and bridges of friendship. Books from around the world, from different cultures, help us see into each other's humanity. Books will make sure that the human race will survive from the many terrible things we are capable of doing to each other. It is now my dream that we can work together and employ technology to further improve access to books for disadvantaged communities, and that the publishing industry is more inclusive and creates spaces for marginalized groups and little-known cultures to present our stories, and that we adults can help infuse the love of reading in younger generations. Listening to my story, you might wonder about my parents, what they thought about me being a writer. Well, this is a picture of my parents here with two of my books and with one of the international awards that I won recently. I hope you can see the happiness on their faces. 2 months and 11 days ago, on 24th of June this year, my world crumbled as I lost my father to a sudden illness. As he was on his deathbed, the pictures I was tagged on social media from readers from around the world with my books gave him strength. And now, even though he is no longer here, you can still see and hear my father in my books. Thanks to all of you, thanks to my readers, my father lives on. His love is a bright light that leads me forward. Thank you so much. Muito obrigada. Thank you.
Okay.